New York Ranger prospects Gabe Perreault, Adam Sykora, and Drew Fortescue are all primed to play in the upcoming World Juniors Tournament. How are all three of these players currently faring with their respective teams, and what should we expect from them in the upcoming tournament? All this and more on today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers.
You're Locked On the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 966 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So wanted to do something a little bit different here today. Obviously, we've got the World Juniors coming up. They will begin on Tuesday. That's actually the day after Christmas. 10-team tournament held annually. The last couple of years, we've seen this tournament contested at different parts of the calendar year. Obviously, a few years ago, COVID wreaked havoc with everything, and it felt like they were always kind of having to adjust on the fly as far as when this tournament was going to be played. The one year, they had to cancel it. They didn't even make it out of the preliminary round, and COVID obviously, ruined the tournament along with a lot of other things. But bottom line, this tournament is a lot of fun to watch every single season, and it's also fun. Obviously, you want to root for your home country and everything. That's always cool. But for me, one of the most exciting parts about this tournament is getting to, watch, usually for the first time or one of the first few times, some Ranger prospects in action. There aren't quite as many Ranger prospects in this tournament that we've seen in years past. By my count, there's only 3 right now. And again, that would be the aforementioned Gabe Perreault, Adam Sykora, and Drew Fortescue. But I figure we could go ahead and just kind of preview the tournament and specifically hone in on these 3 players. Obviously, all 3 of them were high draft picks by the Rangers. Perreault in the first round, Fortescue was a 3rd rounder, and Sykora was the 2nd rounder. So the Rangers have big plans for all these guys going forward. And, without any further ado, let's just go one by one here, talk about all these players and what to expect from them in the tournament and how they're doing so far, in their respective seasons. Obviously, we've got Sykora currently playing for the Hartford Wolfpack, and Fortescue and Perreault both currently playing at Boston College. So we'll start everything here with Gabe Perreault, and he's kind of the headline grabber as far as Ranger prospects are concerned, and as far as the 3 prospects that are going to be competing in this tournament. I think among these 3 players, he's the guy that the Rangers probably have the biggest plans for. He's probably the guy with the most upside out of any of them. And really, just looking at all the Ranger prospects as a whole, I would put Perreault and probably Brian Hoffman at kind of like 1 and 1A. Those are the 2 guys that you look at them and you really could very easily talk yourself into seeing them becoming, superstar players in the NHL. And that's no disrespect to any of the other Ranger prospects. Obviously, you never know for sure. This guy, Henrik Lundqvist, that they took in the 7th round, he turned out to be pretty good. And I don't know how many people saw that coming. But the bottom line, Gabe Perreault, a blue chip prospect for the Rangers. They got big plans for him. And to just kind of refresh you guys as far as, who he is, what his skill set is, and all that good stuff. And then also take a look at what he's done so far with Boston College. We'll just kind of go through this right now. Perreault is going to be representing the USA in this tournament. 18-year-old right winger, 5'11", 165 pounds, has a lefty shot. He really kind of tumbled down the draft board a little bit. I don't want to be too dramatic here because, I think, obviously he still went in the first round. It's not like this guy went a couple of rounds later than people were expecting. But I think a lot of people, going into that draft thought that it was at least possible he could be a top 10 overall pick. And lo and behold, he ends up falling on the draft board quite a bit. And I can remember going into the draft last year, obviously, the Rangers season ends in what was mostly miserable fashion last year against the Devils. And we put a bow on that, did a couple episodes, obviously, on that, and did some year-end centric episodes. But then we went and kind of focused in on free agency a little bit and also the draft. And, looking at the Rangers in the draft, you knew they were going to be picking number 23 overall. And I looked at a handful of different players that could make sense for the Rangers at that spot in the draft. And Gabe Perreault was one of them. But even in that episode, I said that, as much as I like this guy, I just don't think he's going to be there. I didn't think there was any way that he would fall to, basically the final third of the first round. But that's exactly what happened. As far as like why that happened and why Perreault kind of tumbled and went a little bit later than quite a few people were expecting, I mean, the only thing I can really come up with, and I mean, this is coming from somebody who, I mean, I'm not an NHL scout. Let's get that out of the way first. I haven't watched like hours upon hours of Gabe Perreault playing hockey, but the thing that stands out, and I already mentioned it a second ago, the size or lack thereof, 5'11", 165 pounds. Obviously not the biggest guy available in the draft, but the skill set is such that I think by the time he falls down to number 23 and you're the Rangers and you're sitting there and you've got a chance to draft somebody with this much skill, this much offensive upside, I think you have to pounce. And again, that's exactly what the Rangers ended up doing. One of the other things that I did, during some of the draft-centric episodes was I would read some scouting reports about different players. And I'm not going to do too many of those today, but I did want to, read this one on Perreault from Elite Prospects just to kind of, again, refresh you guys a little bit and just remind you of exactly who Gabe Perreault is. And once again, this does come from Elite Prospects, their NHL draft guide from this past, off season here leading into the draft. So what they had to say about Perreault: he's got great hands and sees the ice exceptionally well. The puck is on his stick for a stride or two, just long enough to draw a forechecker. Then it's on the tape of a teammate in motion with space. Perreault is deceptive, adaptable, pacey playmaker who always makes the right choice with the puck. He can sequence plays, put pucks into space, and problem solve against numbers with relative ease. And so as you can tell from that scouting report, Perreault is kind of known as something of a playmaker. He's kind of a facilitator. He's going to rack up a lot more assists than goals in a typical season. I mean, he can score too, but his bread and butter, again, is kind of putting it on a tee for his teammates. And, with the Rangers for years, it felt like year after year after year, they would always draft a left winger. And, I mean, there is something to be said for I'm talking about in the first couple of rounds. Obviously, you go to the later rounds, and maybe they drafted some other positions as well. But they would always draft a left winger first. And it gets to a point where, you want them to eventually draft a right winger. There is something to be said for just taking the best player that's available. And for a while, I think that's what the Rangers were doing. But the fact that Adam Sykora is a right winger, that to me just made him that much more appealing for this Ranger team. To kind of take a look at what he's done with Boston College. He's been very impressive there, his first season there. He's played 17 games with BC so far this season, 5 goals and 20 assists. So he's got 25 points in 17 games. He's also a +6. And for what it's worth, his team, Boston College, currently ranked number 1 in the nation, according to rankings that were put together just 3 days ago. Boston College, once again, ranked number 1. They are 13-3-1. They also received 28 of the 34 votes for first place in that poll. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. This is Perreault's first taste of college hockey, and yet he's there on what, at least according to this poll, is the best team in the nation, and he leads them with 20 assists, also leads them with 25 points, and his 20 assists, that actually also ties him for the second most in the entire NCAA. And if I'm reading this correctly, it sounds like only 3 players in college hockey currently have more points than Perreault. So again, already one of the elite offensive players at the college level. I think Ranger fans were definitely excited to see him get his college career underway, but can't be going much better, at least from an offensive production standpoint. Also worth noting, I love throwing out these video games for some of these prospects that, earlier in their careers were basically just skating circles around everybody. So last year, Perreault played 63 games with the U.S. national under-18 team, and in those 63 games, he had 53 goals and 79 assists, so 132 points in 63 games. He was a +79, so good things tended to happen whenever Perreault was on the ice there. But, again, just looking forward to seeing him play in this tournament, as we are for, anybody, any prospect for the Rangers that gets to make one of these teams. I think it's pretty much a slam dunk that he's going to have a prominent role on the U.S. The U.S. are one of the favorites in this tournament. There's actually an article on the official World Juniors website that kind of ranks the top 10 teams. Canada currently listed as the favorite. U.S. is ranked number 2. But as far as Perreault's role on this team, seems like the top 6 is probably a lock. I would imagine he'll certainly be out there on the power play, probably the top power play unit as well. Hard to know for sure. I don't know the entire roster inside and out, but when you're producing the way he is, I think for sure you're going to have a prominent role. And also worth noting, not his first taste of the international stage either. Last year, he played for the under-18 World Juniors team, and in 7 games, 5 goals and 13 assists. So a monster tournament is certainly something that is on the table here for Gabe Perreault. So we're going to keep everything rolling in just a second. I do want to turn our attention to The other players, they're going to be competing in this tournament, namely Adam Sykora and also Drew Fortescue. Definitely looking forward to doing that in just a second here. First, though, definitely want to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at all the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. All right, so we're going to go ahead and keep everything rolling here. I do want to, in just a second, turn our attention to Adam Sykora. I do also, though, want to mention that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. So big shout out to the everydayers as always. Can't thank you guys enough for always tuning in. We're going to obviously keep rolling here with some more World Juniors talk. In our next episode, though, going to be breaking down the Rangers' next matchup. They will be on Friday night playing host to the Edmonton Oilers. So that should be a good one, and obviously looking forward to coming back here and talking with you guys about that. But for right now, let's turn our attention to Adam Sykora, another prospect that's going to be competing in this tournament. Sykora is going to be playing for Team Slovakia in the World Juniors. It's actually going to be his third time doing so. Sykora, now 19 years old, can play left wing and also center. He is 5'10", 172 pounds. Another lefty shot here as well. The Rangers took him in the second round of the 2022 NHL draft. He was obviously not taken in the first round, but he was the Rangers' first selection of that draft. He was taken in the second round. The Rangers did not have a first-round draft pick that year, but they obviously seem to be pretty high on Sykora as well. Another forward who lacks size, but by all accounts, just a ball of energy out there. Somebody that just never slows down and plays a little bit bigger than his frame would suggest. Fights for pucks, just kind of foot on the gas every single shift. And, I know Ranger fans really like players like that. And he's one of those guys that, assuming that he doesn't end up making his NHL debut with the Rangers, I think he's somebody that has a chance to be very, very popular among the fan base. Also a very talented player to go along with that work ethic. It was funny because he was interviewed not too long after the Rangers chose him in that year's draft, and they were just kind of asking him, all the basic questions, what's it like to be drafted by the Rangers, and who do you model your game after? One of his answers that stood out to me, they asked him what his favorite part of hockey is, and he said penalty killing and defense, which, to me, that was just kind of interesting. This is somebody that does put up good offensive numbers, and obviously those young players, they like getting on the score sheet and everything, but that was just pretty cool to hear, and that could be a role that, he plays, the penalty killing specifically, that he ends up playing for Team Slovakia. We'll see how that whole thing shakes out, but I want to also read another, draft prognostication here from Elite Prospects coming into this last year's draft, or rather 2 years ago when the Rangers drafted him. Few players match Sykora's intensity on the ice. He's all in every shift. He bounces from opponent to opponent, barely giving them any time to handle the puck, blocks shots like he's immune to pain. Love that. And attacks loose pucks like the fate of the world depends on his ability to catch them. On the back check, he pursues escaping opponents and completely neutralizes them. So this is somebody, again, pedal to the metal, full bore, every single shift, leaves it all on the ice every single night, and just sounds like the effort is very, very consistent night to night and even shift to shift, and that's very impressive, especially for a young player and also for a guy who is somewhat undersized. As I mentioned a second ago, this will be Sykora's third go-around with Slovakia at the World Juniors, and to kind of give you guys an idea, just the lay of the land here, we're going to keep talking about Sykora, but to just kind of give you an idea of where everything stands and how all these teams match up, you've got the United States. They seem to be viewed as, kind of the second dog in the fight here, only to Team Canada. And obviously, Fortescue and Perreault both be playing for the U.S. Slovakia enters this tournament as something of an underdog, but these are the rankings of the 10 teams on the official website. Canada 1, U.S. 2, Sweden 3, Finland 4. That's pretty much what you would expect the top 4 to be going into this tournament. Then you've got Czechia at number 5. Slovakia is number 6. Switzerland 7. Germany 8. Latvia 9. And Norway 10. So Slovakia enters as you're not really seen as one of the true powerhouse teams, but also not one of the total underdogs and one of the total long shots either, maybe something of a dark horse team. And for what it's worth, and obviously, Sykora was part of this team, Slovakia made some noise in last year's edition. They actually defeated the United States 6-3 in the preliminary round. And then in the quarterfinals of the knockout stage, single elimination at this point, they took Canada to overtime in that game and ended up losing 4-3, but they were that close to getting a berth in the semifinals. And for what it's worth, Sykora last year, 1 goal in 5 games, was also a -1. The year prior, Sykora had 1 goal in 4 games and was a -4. So he hasn't exactly lit it up in terms of scoring and offense in this tournament, but Sykora, somebody that maybe the third time's the charm, maybe we see him contribute a little bit more often in those areas. And again, Slovakia is a team that never enters as one of the favorites, so that could also partially explain his non-flashy offensive numbers thus far. And also, it is obviously a very small sample size, but we'll look and see how it goes. The good news about Sykora playing for Slovakia is that, again, they're not one of the powerhouse teams, or at least they're not really looked at that way. So you figure there might be a little bit less competition for some of those really prominent roles. And I'm very curious to see if, will Sykora be out there on the top line, or at least in the top 6? Will he be out there on the power play? I think there's a good chance you'll see him killing some penalties, known as a good defensive forward as well. So we'll see how the whole thing goes. Sykora, as I mentioned a little while ago here, is currently on the Hartford Wolfpack. And through 25 games with the Pack, he's got 3 goals and 8 assists. So 11 points in 25 games. He's also a +6. Technically, this is his second season with the Hartford Wolfpack. He ended up playing in 2 regular season games last year, did not have any points, also had 1 assist, and was a +1 in 4 Wolfpack playoff games last year. And also last year, played with HK Nitra, 8 goals, 13 assists in 38 games there. So very, very curious to track Sykora and see his development. Again, he's one of those players that just kind of has that reputation for being relentless and playing every shift like it's his last. I think Ranger fans will certainly appreciate a player like that. And I'm very curious to see whenever he makes his debut for the Rangers. It's not going to happen this year. I mean, I guess never say never, but very minuscule chances of us seeing Sykora with the Rangers this upcoming season. The way I look at it, Brandon Hoffman, could go either way with him, but there was a report, I want to say from Arthur Staple not too long ago, that the Rangers are kind of wanting to see Hoffman play this entire season with the Hartford Wolfpack, and then I think next year, for sure, at the latest, that's when you'll see Brandon Hoffman. But the way I see it, if the Rangers, if they don't call up Brandon Hoffman this year, they're not calling up Adam Sykora, because Brandon Hoffman was drafted, before Sykora was, and seems to be a bigger prospect overall. I mean, again, I guess always never say never, but very, very basically microscopic chance that we see Sykora with the Rangers this year. But that kind of just makes me want to see him in the World Juniors all the more. Hopefully he plays well, and hopefully Slovakia can make things interesting and possibly make another little run for it. So we will see. But going to keep everything rolling in a second. Like I said, we've definitely want to cover all 3 of these players. We've talked about Perreault. We've talked about Sykora. Going to turn our attention to Drew Fortescue, a defenseman for the United States, former 3rd-round pick by the Rangers. We'll talk about him. Also, a couple other aspects of this tournament as well. We will do that in just a second. First, though, we definitely want to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Sleeper. A new NHL season brings all sorts of possibilities. Chris Kreider could score 50 goals. The New York Rangers could hoist the Stanley Cup. And you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our #1 choice for daily fantasy sports, and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you have to do is pick whether studs like Kreider or Mika or Panarin or Fox will record more or less than their Sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus minus, and more in a given game. To win 100 times your bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8-player stats. You heard me, Reindeer fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper, so start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL, and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. Let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here. I want to turn our attention to Drew Fortescue. He is actually a teammate of Gabe Perreault at Boston College, and of course, the two of them will also be teammates in this upcoming tournament, both going to be playing for the United States. And Boston College, as a quick aside, they have a grand total of 7 players playing for the United States alone in this tournament. So they're obviously very well represented. But as for Fortescue, 18 years old, kind of a rep as something of a stay-at-home defenseman, 6'2", 176 pounds, and a third lefty shot. Of all 3 prospects that we're talking about, all 3 of them shoot lefty. The Rangers took him in 2023, this past draft, near the end of the 3rd round. He went number 90 overall, and the Rangers actually traded up a spot in order to make sure that they got him. So far at Boston College, you've got Fortescue having skated in 17 games, 3 goals, 1 assist. He's also a +8, which is tied for the best on the team with Ryan Leonard and Oscar Jelvik. And as we know, as we've established on here, and as I think most hockey fans would probably agree, plus minus, not a perfect stat at all. But I will say this, when you're a freshman defenseman on the best team in the nation and you're leading that team, or at least tied for the lead on that team in the plus minus category, you got to be doing something right. I think that's very impressive. And so far, so good for Fortescue at Boston College. He also has 9 block shots thus far on the season. I'm going to read another scouting report here, once again from Elite Prospects on Fortescue. The quarterback-like approach appears in Fortescue's knack for finding teammates with short touch plays. They appear on the end boards, where he forgoes carries for quick passes along the boards, and on the breakout, where he turns pass receptions and steals into clean zone exits with medium-range feeds that slice through the forecheck. In the offensive zone, those plays are quick feeds to the inside after defenders overplay the shot threat. And again, kind of just remembering everything that we read about Fortescue, and obviously the Rangers, they have their draft, and then I do a couple of episodes where we take a deep dive on every single player that they do draft. One of the things I remember is this is somebody that just kind of doesn't make a lot of mistakes. Just kind of plays a really solid all-around game. Not somebody who's overly flashy, but again, somebody that just is very consistent on a game-by-game basis, and that could be part of the reason why he made the United States here, why he made the team going into this tournament. Definitely looking forward to seeing what happens. But just like Perreault, Fortescue also represented the U.S. at the Under-18 World Juniors, and in that tournament, he had 1 goal, 2 assists, and was a +3. So yeah, I mean, Fortescue, again, solid player and off to a really nice start for, again, at least if you go by record and ranking and whatnot, Boston College currently ranked the top college team in the nation. So Fortescue obviously chipping in a little bit there, but I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what Fortescue does. The other 2 players are kind of like the flashier names and kind of the bigger prospects for the Rangers in some ways, but in some ways I'm kind of curious to see Fortescue in action. Want to just find out a little bit more about him, see what he's all about. And obviously, defensemen, by the nature of the position, they're on the ice for more time than the forwards, with few exceptions. So we'll see how it goes. And obviously, again, Fortescue and Perreault both going to be playing for the United States. So I'm sure I'll be one of many people who will be checking out those games. Obviously, certain nights they're going to overlap with the Rangers. And in that case, you just record the World Juniors game and you watch it the next day. But yeah, definitely looking forward to seeing all 3 of these guys in action. As far as, for anybody who might be new to this tournament, or anybody who just needs a refresher, how it works and whatnot. So there's actually a couple exhibition games that are already underway. Today, in fact, Thursday, the United States will play Sweden, but none of these games count. They're basically just, glorified scrimmages, basically, is what you're looking at. The U.S. and Canada will play each other in an exhibition game on Saturday. That might not be the last time they play each other. That could be your gold medal matchup if everything falls the right way. But the actual competition, the preliminary round, starts once again on Tuesday the 26th. That is the day after Christmas. And then it concludes on January 5th. On that day, you'll have a bronze medal game followed by the gold medal game. And Sweden is the host country this year, for anybody wondering about that. So we're not going to have like really weird, bizarre start times. I mean, you will get a couple of games that are starting in the mid to late afternoon during the week, which is always kind of unique, but that's fine by me. You know, I'll tune into those games at that time if I'm able to. But yeah, I mean, round robin style for the preliminary round. You have 10 teams. You have 2 groups, 2 pools of 5 teams each. Everybody plays everybody else in their pool, and then the top 4 teams from each of the 2 pools advance. You've got 8 teams into the knockout round, the actual tournament, single elimination tournament portion of the competition. So that's when it really heats up, and that's when everybody's playing for keeps. But for anybody that hasn't checked out this tournament in the last couple of years, I definitely highly recommend it. There's been a lot of Rangers that have competed in this tournament. Some of them have won gold. Some of them have kind of up their standing in the pecking order, so to speak, as far as Ranger prospects are concerned. I mean, a lot of them in recent seasons have competed in this tournament. Lafreniere, a few years back, he lit up this tournament, winning the gold for Team Canada. Cabo Kakko helped Finland win a gold back in 2019. In more recent seasons, Dylan Garand was the starting goalie for Canada. He really opened some eyes during the last couple of tournaments here. Won 2 gold medals with Canada, did Garand. Will Cooley was also a teammate of Dylan Garand last year and also part of that gold medal team. So think about that. Will Cooley, he's already with the Rangers. This was only last year where he was playing with, or that might have been 2 years ago. It's kind of confusing because this is known as the 2024 World Juniors, even though it's starting in 2023. So just kind of a strange situation there. But bottom line, in recent history, Will Cooley did play for Team Canada and did win a gold with them as well. So very, very cool for Will Cooley there, and already a member of the New York Rangers just a short time later. Brett Berard, he's somebody that has kind of become sort of like my sleeper prospect for the Rangers. I just like what I've seen from him, and a lot of the time that I've spent watching Berard has been in this tournament. He played for the United States a couple of times. I believe he won a gold medal there as well. Just really like his game, just a relentless forward, and somebody that you could eventually work his way up to the Rangers. We'll see how it goes. Brandon Othman, he also won gold with Canada. He was awesome competing in this tournament. If you want to go like way, way back, Chris Kreider, he played for the United States in 2010, I believe, was his first year and won the gold medal there. Played for them the year after that as well, won the bronze medal. But Kreider lit it up both times in this tournament. Just a couple examples there. Obviously, there's more than just that. But, it's just a great opportunity. If you want to see the Rangers of tomorrow, so to speak, then can't recommend this tournament enough for you. And I do wish there were a few more Rangers in the tourney this year. It sounds like, again, there's only going to be 3, but 3 fairly mid-range to very high-range prospects for the Rangers, all of them taken in the first 3 rounds, and they all have a chance to obviously impact this tournament. So very much looking forward to seeing that happen. To wrap up today's episode, just want to mention that Rangers are going to be home against the Oilers on Friday at 7:30. They will then be home against the Sabres on Saturday, also at 7:30. So what I think we're going to do for the final episode for this week is we'll let the Rangers play the Oilers, and then I'll have a 5th and final episode either late Friday night or we'll save it for sometime on Saturday before the game against the Sabres. So that's kind of where things stand, and then whatever happens against the Sabres, we'll have a full episode for that as well. But that will do it for today, guys. Once again, if you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that's @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.